The warning klaxons echoed across the bridge of the UES Defiance as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison stared at the colossal form displayed on his monitors. 3 days into their deep space assignment near the Kepler 442 system, his crew had discovered something that should never exist in a void. Dr. Lisa Carter pushed through the gathered officers to see the screen more clearly. She was the mission's authority on alien life and technology, and what she saw made her fingers tremble. Hanging in the darkness was a massive object, at least 3 kilometers long and shaped like a warped spear. Its hull was cloaked in dark metal, and gaping wounds exposed empty chambers within. "Captain Hughes to the bridge," Morrison called into his communicator. Moments later, Captain Danny Hughes arrived, his expression grim as he scanned the readouts. "What are we dealing with?" he asked, though he already knew the answer wouldn't be reassuring. Carter stepped forward, her voice steady despite her tension. "Sir, based on hull design and residual energy, this is a Zephyrian warship. The markings roughly translate to Worldbreaker." The bridge went silent. Everyone had heard of the Zephyrians. 15 years earlier, they'd struck human colonies without warning, obliterating 3 settlements before inexplicably retreating from human space. No one knew why they had left, and no one had seen them since. Commander Kate Sullivan, the ship's security chief, folded her arms. "Could be a trap. They might be waiting for us to board." Hughes studied his screen. The alien vessel showed no power readings, no life signs, nothing to suggest survivors. "Morrison, how long's it been drifting?" "Judging by damage and radiation decay, at least a decade, maybe more," Morrison replied. "Whatever happened, it's old." Carter was already scanning the breaches with her equipment. "Captain, these damage patterns don't match human weapons. Some holes are from the inside, like the crew turned on each other." Hughes made his decision.
"We're boarding."
"Sullivan, assemble a team. Carter, you're with us. Morrison, keep the ship prepped for an emergency jump." "Sir, we don't know what killed them. Could be bioweapons, radiation, or worse," Sullivan protested. "That's why we'll be in full environmental suits," Hughes said firmly. "This is the first intact Zephyrian vessel we've ever found. The intelligence value alone is worth the risk." 2 hours later, Hughes led a team of 8 across the void between their ship and the alien wreck. Magnetic boots clanged against the dark hull as they entered a gaping breach. Emergency lights flickered on their suits as they advanced. Inside was unlike anything they had seen. The corridors were narrow and towering, designed for creatures far thinner than humans. Strange symbols glimmered faintly along the walls, still humming with residual energy. The air reeked of chemicals their filters struggled to neutralize. "The architecture suggests the Zephyrians stood about 7 feet tall but very slim," Carter whispered over comms. "Humans would be at a disadvantage fighting here." They found the first bodies in what resembled a command center. The remains were crystalline, dissolved into acidic pools that had eaten into the floor. Whatever killed them had been swift and thorough. Ryan Bell, the comms officer, worked at what seemed to be a data station. "I'm getting readings. The computer's still partially functional." "Can you access their records?" Hughes asked. Bell's fingers moved over alien controls, translation software decoding slowly. "Fragments, but yes, the ship was fleeing something when it was damaged." Carter crouched near one of the pools, scanning. "Captain, these remains show both battle wounds and traces of a biological weapon." "I think the crew used it on themselves." "Why would they?" Sullivan asked. Weapon ready, though nothing lived here. Bell glanced up, pale behind his visor. "I think I know." Records mention something called the Devourers. The fragments suggest they consume entire star systems. A chill ran down Hughes's spine. "What else?" "The Worldbreaker carried intel on human space when it was sabotaged. The crew destroyed their ship rather than let it fall into enemy hands." Bell kept working. "There's more. The Devourers are described as machine intelligences that harvest life and turn worlds into more machines." Carter rose from her examination. "If this is accurate, the Zephyrians weren't our true enemies. They were running from something worse." Sullivan stepped closer. "And now whatever wiped them out knows where to find us." Hughes surveyed the wrecked bridge, reading its story of desperation and sacrifice. "Bell, how much data can you recover?" "Give me a few hours and I can download most of their navigation and tactical records. The language is complex, but translation's progressing. Do it. Carter, I want a full analysis of their tech and any biological samples you can safely gather. Sullivan, broaden the search. I want to know how this ship died, and by whose hand. As his people spread through the vessel, Hughes stared at the alien symbols. Somewhere out there was a power that had driven the Zephyrians into flight, a force that turned a mighty warrior species into hunted refugees. The thought that humanity might be next was one he didn't want to face, but the evidence left little room for doubt. The Zephyrians had possessed technology far beyond humanity's, yet even they had been broken by something greater. Hughes keyed his comm to Morrison aboard the Defiance. Morrison, prep for extended ops. We're staying longer than planned. Understood, sir. Any idea what we're dealing with? Hughes gazed at the ruined alien bridge. Something that makes the Zephyrians look like the good guys. And it might be coming for us. Admiral Patricia Cross sat at the head of the polished table in Earth's most secure chamber. Around her, the most powerful leaders of human space studied the Defiance reports with grim faces. General Kevin Martinez drummed his fingers, while Intelligence Director Claire Watson reread the alien data for the third time. Translation's complete, Watson said softly. Dr. Carter was right. The Zephyrians weren't our main enemy. They were fleeing something called the Devourers. Cross leaned forward. Tell me everything we know about them. Watson activated a holographic display. Black geometric ships shimmered into view. The hulls were sheathed in writhing mechanical tendrils. Zephyrian archives described the Devourers as an ancient machine intelligence. They swept through the void in titanic armadas, devouring whole star systems and transmuting raw matter into further constructs. Martinez examined the alien schematics with a soldier's appraisal. What sort of armaments do they employ? Energy lances capable of cleaving planetary crusts and conversion technologies that transmute organic tissue into machine components. The Zephyrians record battles in which entire crews were assimilated and retooled as living processors. Cross felt her stomach go cold. How many systems have they eradicated? She asked. The records cite at least 40 civilizations completely annihilated. The Zephyrians had been among the rare species to survive first contact. Yet even they were being pushed back. Silence settled over the chamber as everyone took in the scope of the horror. Cross spoke again at last. Where are the Devourers now? Watson adjusted the projection and overlaid a stellar chart with crimson sectors highlighted. According to the navigation logs from the Worldbreaker, the swarm had been advancing through this sector when the Zephyrians fled. If their vector holds, they will reach the fringe of human space in roughly 5 to 10 years. General Martinez rose and approached the map. What about military capability? How do they fight? He asked. Zephyrian tactical transcripts indicate the Devourers operate as a coordinated swarm. Their vessels answer to a central intelligence capable of processing millions of variables at once. They learn and adapt to enemy tactics within minutes and seldom repeat mistakes. Cross turned to Watson. What did the Zephyrians have to counter them? Watson answered, superior ship systems and devastating energy weapons. Their plasma arrays could vaporize Devourer hulls with direct strikes, but the Zephyrian command model was a vulnerability. Captains exercised autonomous judgment, producing gaps in coordination the machines could exploit. At that moment, Dr. Lisa Carter entered, transported directly from the Defiance, bearing several data slates and looking bone-tired after weeks of alien analysis. We need to know what we're facing, Cross said. Can human tech compete with Zephyrian systems, or these Devourers? Carter laid her tablets on the table and brought up schematics. Admiral, in certain fields, Zephyrian tech is centuries ahead. Their quantum drives manipulate space-time, enabling FTL maneuvers that make our jump drives look primitive. Martinez leaned in to scrutinize the readouts. And their weapons? He asked. Their plasma systems are staggeringly powerful, Carter replied, but they rely on organic neural interfaces, direct links to the operator's nervous system. The Zephyrian neural architecture tolerates the feedback. A human brain would suffer catastrophic damage. Watson looked up from her notes. So we can't just copy their tech, she said. Not as is, Carter agreed. But the core principles could be adapted to human control architectures. She activated another slate. We've begun reverse engineering their quantum drives. With focused effort, we could produce a comparable system in about 2 years. Cross studied the defensive readouts. Their shields deflect most conventional ordnance, and their adaptive armor hardens under repeated assault. Carter pointed out the flaw. That armor struggles to compensate against wholly random attack profiles. Martinez managed a grim smile. Random, unpredictable strikes. Humans are good at that. Carter nodded. Zephyrin battle doctrine favored honor and individual prowess over flexible tactics, the records showed. Against a machine intelligence that coordinated flawlessly, that predictability proved fatal. Cross looked to Watson. What advantages do we have? Watson brought up human combat dossiers. Our military history shows rapid adaptation. We deploy irregular tactics, trade units for strategic gain, and operate as coordinated forces rather than isolated duelists. From defeats, we learn and fashion countermeasures, Carter added. Zephyrin culture never pursued sophisticated AI beyond simple automation. Organic minds were held superior to machine logic. Humans, by contrast, have cultivated AI for decades. Martinez began pacing. So our strengths are adaptability, AI augmentation, and unpredictability. Our weaknesses, numbers, individual ship power, and advanced defensive tech, Carter confirmed. One Zephyrian cruiser could probably put 10 of our ships out of action in a straight fight. Cross rose and walked to the observation window overlooking Earth's orbital shipyards. Then we refuse to meet them on their terms, she said. We will adapt their discoveries to human needs and build tactics the Devourers can't foresee. Watson joined her. What do you propose, Admiral? Project Lazarus, Cross said. A new generation of human warships built from adapted alien principles, designed for pack operations instead of lone heroics, smaller hulls, faster propulsion, and weapons integrated with human-compatible AI systems. Carter's exhaustion cracked into something like excitement. We can replace organic neural links with quantum-linked AI controllers. Pilots would command multiple systems via assisted interfaces. Martinez nodded in approval. Train crews in irregular warfare, hit-and-run strikes, feints, sacrificial maneuvers, patterns no purely logical adversary would expect. Cross turned back to the Council. We have maybe 5 years before the Devourers reach our space. That gives us time to prepare, but no room for error. She looked each person in the face. Dr. Carter, lead the tech adaptation effort. General Martinez devised new tactical doctrines. Director Watson, I want continuous intelligence on every Devourer capability. Watson gathered her files. Cross looked once more at the stars visible beyond the glass. And if we cannot stop them, she said quietly, then we make them pay a price so terrible no other species will ever suffer the same fate. We will not go quietly into extinction. The meeting broke with everyone sharply aware of their orders and the narrow clock against them. Humanity's mobilization for war was visible everywhere. Beyond the observation pane, orbital shipyards kept their ceaseless work, soon to raise hulls unlike any the species had ever produced. 5 years had passed since the world breaker was found, and the yards circling Earth thrummed with constant activity. Commander Jake Morrison strode through the construction bay of the UES Retribution, flagship of humanity's new defensive arm. The vessel was something humans had never realized they could build. Sleek, lethal, and threaded with alien systems in every subsystem. Dr. Alex Chen stood beside a vast quantum drive assembly, tapping figures into his slate. As director of Project Lazarus, he had spent every day of the last 5 years converting Zephyrian breakthroughs into practical human systems. The drive before them was smaller than the alien original, yet far more efficient. The quantum field generators are stable, Chen reported to Morrison. We can reach faster-than-light performance comparable with Zephyrian models, and our hulls can execute group jumps rather than isolated leaps. Morrison nodded as he scanned the propulsion arrays. Human engineers had reworked the alien concepts to favor human strengths. Where Zephyrian cruisers had operated as lone predators, human vessels were being built for coordinated packages. Each hull would share targeting solutions and tactical telemetry through quantum-linked communication nets. Across the dock, Dr. Nina Torres supervised installation of the new weapon suites. She had solved the organic interface problem by replacing neural links with AI control systems. Each plasma lance was now governed by a dedicated artificial intelligence capable of parsing targeting vectors faster than any biological operator. "The weapon AI is tracking nominal," Torres called to Chen. "We're seeing firing. Cycles roughly 30% faster than the Zephyrian baseline, because AIs don't require recovery like flesh does." The retrofits went beyond straightforward copying. Human tacticians had combed every Zephyrian combat log and cataloged predictable patterns. The aliens fought with ritualized honor and individual skill. Humanity designed hulls for pack maneuvers and concentrated volleys. Commander Kate Sullivan walked onto the bridge of her new ship, the UES Phantom. From the exterior, it resembled a common cargo freighter, but under deceptive plating, it hid some of humanity's deadliest ordnance. Her ship belonged to the Phantom Fleet, vessels engineered to masquerade as innocuous transports until they struck with devastating surprise. "Stealth suites operational," her pilot Tony Garcia reported. The young flyer had become one of humanity's top aces during the preparation years, mastering both adapted alien systems and irregular tactics. "We can present as refugee traffic until we close to weapons range." Sullivan allowed a tight, grim smile as she reviewed the tactical overlays. The Phantom Fleet would form the first line of offense, ambushing Devourer elements before those forces comprehended they were engaged. Each Phantom carried modified Zephyrian plasma banks tucked behind cargo hatches and false hull sections. Helen Wade, Garcia's wingmate, ran final checks on her fighter squadron. The small craft emphasized speed and agility over armor, built to swarm larger targets like insects attacking a giant. Pilots trained extensively in erratic flight profiles designed to confound deterministic machine logic. "Squadron 7 is cleared for deployment," Wade reported on the net. "All aviators completed randomized pattern drills and can maintain flight corridors that appear chaotic while preserving concealed formation links." Training had proved as vital as hardware. Human crews learned to fight in ways that would look insane to purely logical opponents. Sacrificial strikes timed to create openings, feints that bled enemy resources, and staged withdrawals that feigned collapse but enabled strategic repositioning. Dr. Sam Parker had spent 3 years perfecting the keystone of the defense plan. His quantum disruption emitter could sever or scramble the communication bands Devourer vessels used to synchronize. Integrated into the Retribution's main systems, the device could broadcast disruption fields across entire battle zones. "We calibrated the disruption frequencies using Zephyrian intelligence," Parker explained to Morrison as they reviewed weapon specifications. "We can induce temporary chaos across machine networks, but adaptation will follow. Expect roughly 10 minutes of effective interference per activation." Morrison grasped the tactical implication. 10 minutes in a space engagement could be decisive. Brief windows of disorder could let human formations exploit confusion and land crippling blows. The critical variable would be timing the disruption precisely for maximum effect. Over the prior 2 years, outer colonies had been evacuated to heavily fortified core worlds. The population movements had been presented as routine relocations, but those involved knew the truth. Humanity consolidated into defensible bastions and prepared for the gravest conflict in its history. Admiral Cross had relocated her command to Luna Base to coordinate the system-wide defense. The installation had been expanded with Zephyrian-inspired fortifications and stocked with supplies to survive a prolonged siege. "All fleet elements report ready," General Martinez declared at the final strategic briefing. "We have 47 capital vessels outfitted with adapted alien tech, plus over 200 ships in the Phantom Fleet." Cross studied tactical overlays showing human formations across the solar system. The fleet count was a fraction of the armada Zephyrians had once mustered against the Devourers, but human doctrine and asymmetric design aimed to multiply their effectiveness beyond mere numbers. Crews underwent relentless simulations, rehearsing chaotic scenarios and randomized command cycles, so enemy logic could not predict them. Supply chains were reinforced. Orbital yards ran continuous shifts. Civilians volunteered in droves for auxiliary duties, engineers, medics, and logisticians forming the backbone of the emergency economy. Outlying colonies watched uplink broadcasts and practiced blackout drills. Schools folded survival training into curricula. Across every world there was fear, resolve, and a quiet, pervasive determination to survive. You said, they were engineered to fight another way. Speed, coordination, and sheer unpredictability would negate their technological shortfalls. Throughout the buildup, Dr. Carter had kept probing Devourer capabilities, squeezing every fragment from the World Breaker files. Her newest conclusions were at once hopeful and horrifying. The machines excel at efficiency, Carter told the gathered commanders, but efficiency can become a liability. They streamline every process for peak performance and refuse to squander resources on seemingly pointless acts. Human irrationality could disrupt their targeting calculus. The final element of preparation proved the most morally fraught. Select captains were authorized to undertake sacrificial strikes when necessary, ramming or detonating their ships against priority objectives. It was a gambit no purely logical foe would expect, and one that could turn the tide in decisive moments. As the mobilization wound down, deep space listening posts began to pick up the first signatures at the edge of human territory. Massive geometric hulls moving in flawless formation, energy traces matching the Zephyrian dossiers. Morrison stood on the Retribution's bridge watching distant sensor sweeps with a steady face. Around him, crews ran final checks. Their vessels were built and crews drilled. Tactics had been rehearsed. Weapons lay ready. The Devourers were on their way, but humanity would not meet them the way the Zephyrians had. Single champions and ritual duels. Humans would respond with guile, collective sacrifice, and absolute refusal to yield. The first Devourer elements emerged over Kepler Station like cold angels of annihilation. Commander Tony Garcia saw the black, faceted hulls spill into real space from the jump stream, their surfaces bristling with mechanical tendrils that probed the vacuum as if tasting it. Kepler's distress beacon screamed until its signal simply cut out. Admiral Cross at Luna Base watched live feeds with a mounting dread. The Vanguard numbered 12 capital behemoths, each larger than any human warship, and their advance was terrifyingly systematic. They swept the outer system and stripped everything before them. All outposts report identical behavior, General Martinez told the command staff. They bypass orbital defenses and go straight to industrial nodes and population hubs. Whatever they seek, it concerns organic material and manufacturing capability. Garcia led the initial interception in his squadron of modified fighters. They approached the machines without standard formations, their vectors appearing random and directionless. The reply was brutal. Energy lances lanced from the Devourer flanks with surgical accuracy, cutting half of Garcia's wing from the sky in the opening exchanges. Survivors scattered in every vector, their paths chaotic to any detached viewer. But Garcia refused conventional evasions. Alpha switched to random pattern 7, he ordered. Remaining craft began weaving convoluted courses that seemed tactically nonsensical. Pilots fired at targets that could not possibly be damaged by their weapons, burned reaction mass on needless spirals, and flew like hunted animals. The Devourer targeting suites built to anticipate logical countermoves faltered. Machine minds had been optimized to foresee rational responses. Genuine human unpredictability fell outside their operational envelope. Garcia's fighters clung to existence for almost an hour before disengaging. The decisive lesson came at Titan Station. Commander Helen Wade brought 3 squadrons to bear on a Devourer processing vessel that was turning station girders into new machinery. Her opening salvo followed textbook doctrine, coordinated strikes at assumed critical nodes. The machine adapted in minutes. Defensive layers analyzed incoming patterns and began to predict strike corridors with lethal speed. Wade watched her plan collapse piece by piece to an enemy that learned faster than her formations could vary. "Break formation, abandon coordinated runs," she snapped. "All squadrons engage individual randomized attacks. No shared patterns, no repeatable vectors." The shift was immediate and stark. Pilots flew like marauders, making choices that would look insane to a logic-first foe. They assaulted well-defended sections while ignoring softer targets, burned ordnance on non-essential systems, and executed movements that served no clear tactical purpose. Devourer processors kept hunting for structure in actions that had none. Their pattern-matching routines looped fruitlessly. Wade realized the truth. Human chaos was a weapon unpredictability into a repeatable tactic. Small units learned to orchestrate controlled chaos, baiting moves that drained machine compute cycles, feints forcing defensive shifts, and timed sacrificial runs that opened passages for larger ships. At Titan, the gamble succeeded. An improvised swarm pulled the processing ship's defenses wide, just long enough for demolition teams to breach its conversion chambers. Charges ripped the. Admiral Cross, acting on WDE's combat reports, greenlit Operation Righteous Fury. From shadowed anchorages across the outer system, the Phantom Fleet slipped forth, each vessel disguised as a refugee transport fleeing the Devourer tide. Beneath their false plating, however, lurked enough armament to gut a capital ship, provided they could close to striking distance unseen. Commander Kate Sullivan helmed the lead Phantom toward a cluster of enemy auxiliaries. Her cargo bays brimmed with altered plasma batteries and quantum disruption warheads. On Devourer sensors, she was nothing more than another frightened civilian transport. The machines ignored her approach. Sullivan held her fire until she was less than a kilometer away, then dropped the disguise and unleashed every weapon she had. 3 Devourer craft died in the first eruption before the fleet could react. All across the system, other Phantom captains mirrored her ruse, striking from angles no machine predicted. The Devourers had never conceived of warships masquerading as the helpless. Meanwhile, Dr. Alex Chen triggered the quantum disruption array during the battle for the asteroid belt processing stations. A massive constructor vessel was steadily converting rock into war machines when Retribution broadcast the field. Chaos erupted instantly. Devourer links dissolved into static. Vessels, cut off from the collective, lurched into disjointed action. With the hive fractured, Morrison pressed the main fleet, hammering isolated targets while the enemy scrambled to resynchronize. For 8 vital minutes, the superior machines fought like disconnected fragments rather than a single entity. But adaptation came swiftly. Hardened protocols reestablished their web, and Chen's weapon fell silent against new defenses. It had worked once. It would not work the same way again. The most punishingly effective tactic turned out to be scorched earth. As the Devourers drove inward, human forces stripped and destroyed every asset they could not hold. Stations were evacuated and detonated. Mines collapsed. Derelicts booby-trapped. The machines, coded to preserve resources for assimilation, faltered at this deliberate waste. Their advance slowed, churning as they recalculated a logic for self-destruction. Captain Danny Hughes commanded the stand at Mars's orbital shipyards. He knew his handful of ships could not halt the incoming squadron outright. Instead, he seeded the yards with colossal charges. When the black giants swept in to begin their harvest, Hughes ignited the traps. The chain reaction obliterated the docks and crippled several Devourer hulls caught too close. The enemy learned, painfully, that humans fought by alien rules. To machine logic, humanity's strategies looked like folly, squandering assets, burning resources, accepting Pyrrhic victories. Yet these irrational choices slowed the advance, draining enemy reserves and warping their perfect efficiency. Battle by battle, the truth became unavoidable. Humanity's greatest strength was its willingness to embrace madness. They fought like desperate beasts, feral, illogical, and terrifying. The Devourers pressed ever closer to Earth, but a new calculation was forming within their vast intelligence. For the first time in their relentless expansion, they were learning to fear. Fear a species that turned chaos.